But there's an even deeper issue here, which is that the mind has a primordial need to know itself. There's a deep curiosity that runs throughout mankind as a whole, throughout our intellectual traditions, throughout our culture. We want to know ourselves. We want to figure ourselves out. This is what mankind has been doing since the dawn of civilization. We've been figuring ourselves out. We've been figuring out the world. We've been figuring out reality. And of course, reality is us and we are reality. And you as an individual, you have a curiosity to know too. You know, little children have an innate curiosity. You know, they ask kind of stupid questions like, why is the sky blue? And then if you tell them, well, it's blue because, you know, there's certain chemicals in the atmosphere and the sun bounces off at a certain angle and makes it blue. And then they ask you, well, but why are those chemicals there? And then why, the whys never stop. See, that's what I'm talking about by that primordial desire to know itself. Mind has a primordial desire to know itself, individually and collectively. But most people don't understand what this primordial desire is. We kind of think of it as something kind of frivolous, like, oh, well, we're just kind of curious. You know, a little kid is just kind of curious about the colors of the sky. It's like, oh, well, is there anything deep there going on? It's like most people would say, no, they're just kind of like, you know, they're just being kids. Or even if you're like a fancy scientist in a university, you might say, well, no, like, Leo, I have a deep primordial desire to understand the universe. Okay, well, my question to you is why? Why? And you might say, well, it's because of, you know, natural selection, you know, because I evolved from a series of apes and other ancestors of ours. And then, you know, knowledge was very helpful for survival. And those creatures and those tribes who understood reality better and deeper, they got a survival advantage, and therefore they out-evolved and out-competed and out-survived all the other tribes. And so here we are today, and that's still going on, and science is just a continuation of that. That's a cool story, but that's not really why you have this desire. The reason you truly have this desire is because God or reality wants to know itself. And you are God. I'm not going to get too deep into that. I've talked about that elsewhere. I'm just throwing that little nugget out there for those of you who are in the know. You are God. You are reality. You're trying to know it's yourself. But you don't understand this yet. And so you're struggling. You know, you're struggling to figure stuff out. You're curious. You don't even know why you're curious. You just know you're curious. You might wonder, like, well, what's the big deal? Like, why would reality want to know itself? You know, the first problem here is that most people, in fact, most scientists, materialists, rationalists, atheists, and so forth, they would deny that reality can even know itself. They would say, no, Leo, humans want to know themselves and want to know reality. Reality itself doesn't care and doesn't want to know it. It can't know anything. How can reality know itself? It's just a dumb material system. It can't know itself. Well, you're wrong there. The problem is you don't really know what reality is. You don't know reality to such a deep extent that you don't even know yet that reality can know itself, because you're not recognizing that you actually are reality. Reality is not something other than you, it's you. So if you want to know yourself, if you have curiosity, that means reality has curiosity. That's not a trivial point. That's a very deep point. But to get that, to get the depth of it, you have to get some awakenings and some God realizations in there. So reality wants to know itself. You might wonder, well, why would reality want to know itself? What's so important about that? Well, reality is an infinite mind, FYI. That's news to you. Reality is an infinite mind. And what else is there for an infinite mind to do but come to know itself ever more deeply? That's the only business that God is in, that consciousness is in. The business of consciousness is self-understanding, self-knowing, self-realization, awakening to itself. That's the motive force behind all of consciousness, is that it's trying its damnedest. It's struggling with itself to awaken. And so your curiosity, that primordial desire to know stuff, you know, you hear a noise in your basement and you're curious, like, what's that noise? Well, guess what? That's a little bit, like a little tip of the iceberg. Like the reason you're curious about that noise, it's not just to save your ass from some predator or some serial killer who could be hiding in your basement. It is that to some degree. You can use that knowledge to help you survive, but something more primordial and fundamental is going on at the existential level. And at the existential level, the reason you're curious about these things is because you're God and you want to ultimately understand yourself and to awaken to the fact that you're God, even though you don't realize that yet. And that curiosity is how you're going to do it. That curiosity is sort of the tether. It's the thing that tethers you to God. It's the thing that keeps you from being lost from God forever, because you can use that thread of curiosity to awaken yourself. If you follow it long enough. The problem is that most people don't really appreciate what that curiosity can do for them, and they don't follow it long enough, deep enough to realize, that thread will lead you back to God. If you're curious enough about reality, long enough, deep enough, seriously enough, with enough commitment and passion, you will eventually reach God by following that breadcrumb trail. It's just that most people don't do it. And also, it's so counterintuitive and it's so tangled and it's so convoluted that it's very easy to get lost. And it's very easy to fall into all sorts of traps and deceptions along the way, and you'll get brainwashed by other people and knocked off track. So you'll very easily lose track of the breadcrumb trail. And so my job is to help lay out that breadcrumb trail for you, make the breadcrumbs a little bit more visible than they normally are, motivate you to go on the journey of following this breadcrumb trail and seeing where it leads you. And where it will lead you to is infinity.